It is best to really have a clarity on it and the situation on ground. So I'm really honored for this interview to be able to share the little I know.
On the record with the First Lady of Nigeria as we press into the reality of the persecution Christians are facing there in the African nation, and to probe what the Nigerian government is doing to protect its own people from religious targeting. Welcome to EWTN News In Depth. I'm Catherine Hadro. One of the most dangerous places in the world for Christians today is in Nigeria. U.S. President Donald Trump redesignated Nigeria as a country of particular concern just 4 months ago for its severe violations of religious freedom. A recent House resolution that's been proposed to condemn the persecution of Christians in Nigeria paints a grim picture of the reality there. Looking at the numbers, it is estimated between 50 to 100,000 Christians have been killed for their faith in Nigeria since 2009. More than 7,000 Christians killed in 2025 alone. There are an average of 35 Christians murdered every day, with more than 19,000 churches having been attacked or destroyed. There are frequent news reports of mass kidnappings in Nigeria targeting Catholics and Christians, even school children being taken away. Earlier this month, a parish priest in the Archdiocese of Kaduna in Nigeria confirmed the parish's catechist, his very pregnant wife, and 30 other people were kidnapped in a bandit attack. It's just the latest example of such a tragedy. On Monday, the House Appropriations Committee and House Foreign Affairs Committee delivered their joint report on the persecution of Christians to the White House. It outlines several concrete actions to help end the persecution and growing extremist violence, including establishing a bilateral U.S. and Nigeria security agreement to protect vulnerable Christian communities, withholding certain U.S. funds until the Nigerian government can demonstrate it's stopping violence against Christians, and demanding the repeal of Sharia and blasphemy laws, among other recommendations. It is with this reality as the backdrop that EWTN News In Depth received an invitation earlier this month to sit down with Nigeria's First Lady in Washington, D.C. A former senator in her own right, she is also a Christian pastor, married to the Muslim president of Nigeria, Bola Tinubu. She pushes back on claims that Christians in Nigeria are being targeted. Here is my on-the-record interview with Nigeria's First Lady, Oluremi Tinubu.
We're honored to be joined today by the First Lady of Nigeria, who also happens to serve as a Christian pastor at the largest church in Nigeria, a very respected woman. First Lady, please, where are you?
Nigeria's First Lady, Oluremi Tinubu, was on a bit of a whirlwind diplomatic tour in the U.S. Capitol early this month, a move that made some religious freedom advocates weary.
The First Lady was here. She was here this week, and in fact, they wanted to come on the program to talk about religious freedom. And I said, I'm not going to give them. I'll meet with them. I'm happy to meet with anybody.
Same here.
But I'm not going to give them a platform to cover up what they're doing in Nigeria.
And that's just what it is—a massive cover-up.
I'm really honored for this interview to be able to share the little I know. To visit, to also share some of the worrisome news that that has been going through the social media for some time.
You are in an interfaith marriage. Your husband, the president, is Muslim. Can you speak about that interfaith dynamic in your marriage? And was your family surprised when you married a Muslim man?
Nigeria has a population of over 250 million people, diverse culture, and also multi-faith. But I'll talk about my marriage, like you said. Down south, predominantly Christians. But we have Muslims also. And most Muslims and Christians intermarry. And when I introduced my husband to my dad, who knows more about faith than me then, my dad said, "You're Muslim. I hope you won't stop her from going to church." And he said, "Never." So, and then, in the marriage, marriage is challenging, but drove me to know more about the Lord.
You've brought up this theme of multi-faith and how that is lived out in Nigeria. And Nigeria itself is home to extraordinary diversity, as you've said. And there are 3 major tribes in Nigeria, if I understand this correctly. House of Fulani in the north, the Yoruba in the southwest, and the Igbo in the southeast.
Yes.
Communities each with distinct cultures. But when we are
there are various challenges too
in each one, and when we do look at these reports of Christian persecution specifically, it seems a lot of the violence and intimidation is most acute in the north and in the middle belt,
in the Christian states.
And so, as a Christian and as a First Lady, what do you say to Christian mothers in the north specifically, who fear sending their children to school, and how do you rally the rest of the country amid, the diversity to stand up for this as well?
One thing I would say is those 3 states are actually agrarian states. The best lush greens for any cattle rearer will be envious of. As Christians, we are supposed to have God fight our battles. Christianity says the weapons of our warfare are never carnal. It's only through God that we fight, and which is more a spiritual fight. We pray and believe and have faith that God will fight our battles. But inside Christianity, do you have evil people? Muslim, do you have evil people? Yes, there are evil people around the world. And so when envy comes in a mind, and a thief will come to steal what doesn't belong to them. So it's first started as herders-farmers conflict in all these areas, and it has been going on for decades.
So what do you say to those Christian families who are scared?
You see, that's the thing that, all this has a lot of elements to it, and the government is trying to find a lasting solution. So I personally will not tell you that I know firsthand what is going on, but this has been there for a long time. And the military and security agency have been doing their best. But is it enough? No.
Father Don Bosco Ihyula, founding editor of EWTN News' ACI Africa, joined me from Nairobi, Kenya, to explain the Nigerian government's response to reports of Christian persecution.
Let me be a bit specific about Abuja, which is the capital city. Abuja has reframed violence affecting Christians as part of general insecurity involving terrorism, banditry, farmer-to-herder clashes, and communal violence, which also affects, they say, Muslims and other groups.
We asked Nigeria's First Lady herself whether she believes there is religious targeting.
You mentioned this long history of the violence that is going on there. Are there groups specifically targeting Christians?
That's what I'm going to tell you. That if you go, you're coming from a Muslim state and you enter a Christian state, predominantly Christian, and then you come in as herders and also the farmers that are there, there's always a clash. So not that they came out to get Christians, but they came there to feed their cattle on crops that don't belong to them. So that started, and not only that, because of the level of poverty, there is banditry, there is kidnapping for ransom.
This week, an AFP investigation found the Nigerian government paid Boko Haram militants a huge ransom to free hundreds kidnapped from St. Mary's Catholic School in the western state of Niger.
That report, based on multiple intelligence sources, asserts that the government effectively paid millions of dollars in ransom to Boko Haram militants to secure the release of the over 200 children and staff abducted from that Catholic school. And that even 2 Boko Haram commanders, as part of the deal, were released.
You mentioned that there still needs to be more done in order to combat these reports that we're hearing. In November, more than 300 school children were kidnapped from St. Mary's Catholic primary and secondary schools community.
And they were rescued.
And they were rescued and released, but the details remain unclear of that release. When you say we need to be doing more, do you foresee there being more transparency moving forward about these rescues?
There is transparency, but what we do need is to have proper security. A security that will be able to secure lives. Our number in population is overwhelming for a country that is just growing. We are an emerging economy. Yes, we have the resources. God blessed us with natural resources, which were, not appropriately used for the benefit of the country in the past. And now, we are now left with a lot of burden. Immediately my husband assumed office, he had to remove fuel subsidy, which no government has ever tried. If he didn't do that, Nigeria is in the verge of collapse. We would have gone through a form of revolution. But in our budget, what did the president give priority to? Security first, health, and education.
In November, President Trump posted on his Truth Social that he may go into Nigeria guns a-blazing to completely wipe out the Islamic terrorists if the Nigerian government did not stop the killing of Christians. And on Christmas Day, the U.S. launched airstrikes against ISIS militants in northwest Nigeria in coordination with the Nigerian government.
In my final moment with you in our conversation, can you just summarize what action is the government taking to stop these kidnappings from happening, and will there be prosecutions?
Yes, there are. And immediately that all the news in the social media started, and President Trump also issued the statement that, they are going to be placing attack on those bandits. What happened was my husband in November now declared a state of emergency on November 26 to be precise, 2025, a state of emergency on insecurity. And what did it do? We had to recruit 50,000 policemen, 24,000 soldiers, 10,000 forest guards who previously were not armed. So they have to be retrained to carry arms. And when we look at all that, the dynamics of it in a population as big as Nigeria, it's overwhelming enough. So, and I can reassure you that Nigeria is in good hands. My husband is doing all he can do to bring sanity to the situation, try to get as many allies. We just pray that things, gets better.
Here now to share their reaction to the Nigerian government's response to Christian persecution and for insight into the reality Christians face there in Nigeria today is our expert panel. Father Remigius Ihyula is a Catholic priest in the Diocese of Makurdi, Benue State in Nigeria. He's been prominently involved in humanitarian and peace initiatives and serves as coordinator for the Nigerian Catholic relief organization Foundation for Justice, Development, and Peace. He joins us from the San Francisco area. Sean Nelson serves as Senior Counsel for Global Religious Freedom with ADF International, where he advocates on behalf of Christians and other religious minorities being persecuted for their faith around the world. Gentlemen, thank you both for being here for this important discussion. Father Remy, I want to go to you first. As a Nigerian Catholic priest, what's your reaction to the Nigerian First Lady's portrayal of Christian persecution in the nation? Are Christians being targeted in Nigeria?
Yes, Catherine, thank you for having me. And thank you, Sean. Good to see you. My reaction, first of all, is a reaction of shock. And I must say that I'm ashamed of myself as a Nigerian to hear our First Lady speak this way. I had the opportunity to meet her in Washington when she came. And I told her firsthand from the experience of someone who has been on the ground. I've been serving in this role for many years, over 15 years. I've carried people who have been hacked down, butchered as if they were animals, thrown away from their homes, people coming shout Allahu Akbar, like the incident in Yelwata a year ago. So, and the situation of Nigeria's move towards Islamization is very well known. I wonder why someone as high as her will come and speak to the American public and want to be politically correct. I'm not too surprised because many people in politics in Nigeria and the people who are super rich in Nigeria care less about the situation of persecution of Christians, even if they are Christians themselves. You have not seen pastors of mega churches come out to condemn the persecution of Christians and stuff like that. It is a few people who are risking themselves and speaking about this. One of them is my Bishop Anagbe, whom you know very well, who always speaks about this issue.
Right.
We have been tracking this delve into Islamism and the desire to take over Nigeria and push away Christian populations for a very long time. Now it's common knowledge, and now with the media, you can no longer deceive people for long. So I'm shocked. I'm ashamed, and I'm very bitter about how someone as prominent as her, who could have been the mother of all Nigerians in this time, and say, look, this is a problem that we have, but we should put hands together and see how we can tackle this problem. She didn't do any of that.
And Sean, following up on that, why is there a narrative coming from the Nigerian government that attacks on Christians are not religiously based?
Yeah, it's been a series of denials for years and years, and it hasn't just been the Nigerian government. It's been the mainstream media that's done this for many years. And only in the past year, and I think especially after President Trump's big announcement back in October, calling out the persecution of Christians in Nigeria, has it gained a lot more traction. You're talking about thousands every single year for year and year on end. This past year, there was recent numbers, about 3,490 Christians killed and targeted for their faith. And that's just the murders. And as Father Remy mentioned, we're talking about putting people into churches, locking them there and burning the churches to where you can't even find out what the numbers are. You're talking about internally displaced persons, mothers and their children being hacked to death. It's atrocious, and it's been happening all the time, every single week. Just this week now in Adamawa State, there were dozens who were killed in an attack there. The denials, I think, as Father Remy said, there is some politics going on. Nigeria is roughly split between about half Muslim, half Christian, and many of those Muslims are in the north, and that's an important political bloc. And nobody wants to say all Muslims are extremists or violent. That's absolutely wrong. And where, especially in the south, Muslims and Christians have gotten along very well. In many parts of the north, they get along very well. But there is a growing extremist ideology that's been growing for about 20, 25 years, and that because the denials of that extremism have been going on, it's been allowed to fester. So that's been just an atrocity.
And hopefully more attention is starting to get paid attention to right now. Father, I want to go back to you. Can you tell us what kind of threats and violence do Catholic priests face in Nigeria? And is the Nigerian government enabling persecution to continue, in your opinion?
Well, to say they're actively enabling persecution to continue may not be a correct framing, but I do think that what they have not done is that they have not shown a willingness to tackle the problem headlong. Because this problem has not started today. Look, Catherine, the problem with the religious extremism in Nigeria has gone back many decades. There is a story of Mitatine started in Kano, and all through. Then Boko Haram came, Lukarawa came. As I speak to you, the most deadly Islamic movement is the Fulani militants. And a lot of people don't want to call them because they think that, okay, if you say Fulani militants, you are painting the whole tribe with a brush. But they are Fulani, and we just have to call them by what they are. We're not saying all Fulani are into this, but many of the people who come into the Middle Belt, especially, and Southern Kaduna and the Benue State, where I come from, and other parts of the Middle Belt to kill, are Fulani militants. So we must call them out. But the tracing of Islamic jihadism and the desire to make our country Islamic by all means necessary, both violent and non-violent. We're all talking about the violence. There is also the non-violent element component. They have implemented Sharia in many states. As I speak to you, it is Ramadan. Some people cannot walk freely. Some days ago, a young lady was beaten by three gentlemen in Kwara State. They claimed that she didn't cover her head because it's Ramadan and things like that. Schools are closed during Ramadan. For heaven's sake, in a country that is supposed to be secular. There are many other things that are happening. But to speak to the threats you're talking about, priests have been killed. In my own diocese of Makurdi, 2 priests were gunned down celebrating Money Mass. Gunned down. Last year, a fellow priest, again, Father Solomon Atongo, I'll call his name, was shot and left in a pool of his blood. They thought they had killed him. So these are the threats that priests, and in other dioceses, priests have been killed, seminarians killed, in the rectories. They attacked even the rectories. It's not as if this is hidden. It's not hidden. You go to churches and you kill people, and then someone comes out and say, "Oh, there's no attack on Christians and things." It's laughable.
Oh my goodness, Father, those stories are horrendous. Sean, we mentioned that Trump recently redesignated Nigeria as a country of particular concern. How are U.S.-Nigeria relations right now?
So that happened back in October, and the initial reaction from the Nigerian government was pretty hostile. But over time, I think, as there was more attention paid to it, it just became so undeniable. And the point of these designations is not just to say you're a bad country, we don't want to work with you. The point is to help the people who are being killed, to help the people who are being kidnapped, and to make sure that religious freedom is protected for everybody. And that's a real value. It's an American value. It's an international value, and it's a value for a lot of Nigerians. And so this has moved into a more cooperative stage. I think that's a very positive thing. There have been some recent recommendations given to the president from Congress, Congressman Riley Moore, Congressman Chris Smith, the House Foreign Affairs Committee, different committees. They've really put a lot of effort into this with great recommendations. I very rarely have seen such incredible effort from an administration as I've seen right now with Nigeria. And there has been good responses. I think from some portions of the Nigerian government, there have been some personnel changes and things. Interest in improving security, interest in helping the IDPs. Father Remy and you both mentioned the issue of Sharia criminal law, blasphemy laws, mob violence. That can lead to the death penalty there. It's a really terrible thing. There's a number of different issues, but those recommendations, if they're followed through, could in the next few years really make a huge difference. But they have to be followed through. They
have to be followed through. Father, finally, my last minute with you, I do want to ask you this. The Vatican announced this week Pope Leo will visit Algeria, Angola, Equatorial Guinea, and Cameroon this year, his first major overseas trip of 2026. How significant is this, and what are you anticipating from our Holy Father going to Africa?
First of all, Catherine, it's very significant because Africa is the place to go to now for the growth of Christianity. You know that very well. Nigeria has more than 90% of Catholics going to Mass almost on a daily basis. The faith is growing in Africa. Africa is once again becoming the center for the growth of the faith. So it is really, really good to see that Pope Leo has wasted no time to visit Africa. I wish that Nigeria would have been on the list. I really longed and prayed that Nigeria would be on the list, but I do hope that in a very short while he will come to Africa. The reason is that on these visits is able to encourage the Christian faithful, especially those who are suffering violent persecutions like Christians in my country, Nigeria, and in neighboring country, Cameroon. Part of Cameroon is also suffering a lot. So these visits are pastoral, but they are also going to serve as encouragement for the Christian body and to inspire others also to begin to take their faith seriously and not to give up in the face of this rising Islamic intent to take over the whole of Africa.
Yeah. There's so much to discuss. We'll have to leave it there. Father Remy and Sean, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Sean.